Well, the wait is over. Welcome to 2025, and can you believe it? It's now season 7. That's 7 years we've been doing FontCast, which is more seasons in one day than the average Tasmanian day. Hello, I'm Becher, Townshend, and welcome to FontCast, Tasmania's top-rating political podcast. I did, thank you.
I liked it.
Anyhow, there you go. And this year we'll bring you more of what makes FontCast so special. Exclusive hashtag Polytas news and the frank and fearless analysis you won't get anywhere else. And for the first time, we're actually recording it on YouTube.
Well, it's not the first time. We've tried it a couple of times before with the annual golden font.
Oh, yes, that's true.
We're going to make this, assuming Sam can work the
magic.
It'll be a regular thing. You'll be able to catch us in person.
As long as I don't
live.
screw it up.
Yeah, you'll be able to see three bearded gentlemen of a certain age wax lyrically about the world. Anyhow, four and plus Sam. But
I'm not of a certain age.
there you go. Great work. I am. But first, welcome back my co-host, my business partner and veteran political hack, Brad Stansfield.
Yes, yeah, great to be back. Hello, Beach. Hello, Sam. Hello, David. Yes, Mr. Willie, and a little media release he slipped out last week, called me a veteran. I think it might be a tag I'm unable to shake.
I think that one's sticking, mate. And of course, the Mercury's chief political reporter, David Killick, a different kind of hack. How was your Christmas, David?
It was absolutely great. Worked all the way through, wrestled with the great summer survey and the unvarnished feedback. My favourite Christmas moment was getting to question 85 of the which was an open slather, say anything you want. The number of people who answered all 85 questions to that survey and then said, but I don't read the Mercury. It's like gotcha. Or just slipped in some little bar, I don't like you at all. It's like maybe 1%.
Righty-ho, let's get into it. We've been on holiday, but the world of Tasmanian politics hasn't. So the rundown sheet for today really does seem like deja vu, I've got to say. The latest on the Spirit saga, including the new TT line board. The latest on the stadium, including Peter Gutwin's, let's say, unhelpful comments.
He loves Launceston again.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? And Michael Ferguson's Christmas reading list.
Most interesting.
We'll also take a look at the fast approaching federal election campaign and a few candidate exclusives. But first, Brad, you wrote a column for the Font publishing newspapers recently called The Premiership Quarter. I didn't know you were an AFL fan.
Well, I'm not. Not ever since the outrageous double jeopardy on Essendon in the early teens, 20 teens, when they were punished twice for something that every other AFL club was doing. Particularly Brisbane, that used to juice themselves up on the field, as I recall, at the start of the century. Okay. Anyway.
Not that you're bitter or have a memory like an elephant.
Exactly,
no, not
right.
at all. Yeah.
But I do like a good analogy.
Yes.
And my thesis that I published was that this year in Tasmanian politics will be a really, really important year. It will be like the Premiership quarter. It will go a long way towards deciding the outcome of the election. There won't be an election this year, in my judgment, unless something really outrageous happens.
Yep.
Labor's worked out, I think, after their near accidental election last year, that they're not in a position to win an election. They're not in a position to form government.
Yep.
They need more time to build their support base and to drag the government down. So this year, I think we're going to see, hopefully, a little bit of a more stable year without sort of constant election speculation, but we will see a lot of politicking from both sides. That's my feeling of how this year will progress in state politics. Rich.
Okay, so you wrote a bit about the three issues which you see as defining the year ahead. Let's start with the most pressing of those, the ferry fiasco.
Ferry fiasco, the Spirit saga, whatever you want to call it. Look, government's making steady progress on this one. I think they're slowly hauling it back in. I think I saw the Premier the other day talking about the fact that they're starting to get some piles into the wharf, to the water at Devonport Wharf, which is amazing.
Yep.
So things are moving finally in the right direction, but they've still got the problem with this boat, which I don't know what to do with. Time's running out on leasing it for the European summer. I think, was it Erica Betts indicated recently they'd be making a decision very soon. I think they they will have to do that. My mail is they're probably not going to get a suitable lease overseas.
Yep.
And I think on that basis, and it was worth having a crack, but I think on the basis they're not going to get that lease, they need to get the thing back here and get it back here fast. Not back here, get it here. It hasn't actually been here yet, has it? Get it here fast and make a big thing of it. It's a big thing despite all the issues. Don't try and hide it. Actually, sort of put the chutzpah on 100 and get out there and dance and sing and exclaim and make a really big thing. Being a water cannons, the whole thing. People bring it into Hobart.
State tour, Mac Harbour.
State tour, Mac Harbour.
Boat Harbour.
I've got to watch out for them
Frankston,
skate there. And then I do
Up the
think...
Hewen, Franklin.
And then I do think when they get it here...
They'll go wild New Beena for it.
They will. Put it to work.
Yeah.
Clearly it can't take vehicles because they've got the problem with ramps, but there's no reason why it can't take passengers. Cruise ship dock down here is empty at the moment.
The ferry, you could put on the Sandy Bay run.
You could do all sorts of
Go
things
on
with
one
it,
end,
couldn't
come off the other.
But I mean, if you ran it on a sightseeing tour to say, I don't know, Maria Island or something out of Hobart, there'd be lots of Tasmanians who'd love to just go on a bit of a day trip, take their sandwiches with them, enjoy the view, see what these beautiful new ships are like.
Yeah,
so why not?
It's going to lose money,
out of it?
no doubt. It's going to lose money, but
Might lose less money.
Well, that's exactly right.
certainly not going to be collecting, sea stars and barnacles at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So, and what about the Spirit 5? What's your thoughts about
I think
that
they
one?
need to be encouraging the shipyard to do a very slow and careful build on that one.
Yeah.
Because
I think they could take the time.
not their problem until it's built.
Well,
So
I think they could
slow guys. No rush.
even perhaps waive the late delivery
Possibly.
financial clause again. Anyhow, Killer, you've had time to reflect as you've kayaked down some various
completely
things
empty my mind.
Yeah, and been on a cray boat, out there in the real world. What's your thoughts? What do you think of the current situation with the Spirits?
Well, yeah, I mean, the heat seems to have gone out of it. I mean, part of the issue is that everyone's away. There's this, you have this period, you go right up to Christmas and you have this period that seems to extend now well into February where, we're really just taking out the trash. We've got some reports coming out, little bits and pieces of housekeeping, some, people just rolling their arms over in warm up for the year, but no one's really about yet. So the heat's gone out of it. It will continue to be until, there's until it's on the run, it's going to be a bleeding sore for the government. But, whether this is the issue of the year or there's some other, absolutely as yet unknown horror show for the government, for the opposition, for whoever, the carnival tends to be fairly entertaining.
Well,
so,
we
who
did
knows what we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Well, there's no knowns, there's unknowns. But we did open last year with thinking it would probably be all about the stadium, and of course the Spirits eclipsed the stadium. So this year, you're right about it being a quiet period. Brad's right to raise the point that finally we've got some action. Finally, we've got some poles being driven up at Devonport, and something happened. We've got. I can say I'm still yet to get any movement on how we're going to fuel them, but that's just my little gripe at the moment. But I do broadly agree. I did notice the government announced a stack of changes to the TT line board last week. I was interested. Look, I had a good close look at the appointments, and I've got to say, I don't have any specific beef with any of the people that have been appointed per se, but a couple of things I would say is one is they've certainly got a strong infrastructure bent on the new board. I couldn't see, and perhaps I only had a cursory glance, but I couldn't really see anybody who'd really run a shipping line per se or a tourist transport line. I mean, the success of Bernard Dwyer, when he was running the TT line, in my view, was he came from a hospitality background and he turned those vessels into an experience and made the journey a much more enjoyable thing, speaking as a passenger, a reasonably regular passenger. So I just wonder where they're going to go. They're clearly focused on that. But the other point I'd make, it's a more fundamental point, is they've gone through inverted commas, transparent selection process to get the best qualified people for the job. Well, I don't know. Look, I've run a business for many years. Brad, you've been involved in this business. If we want to find somebody to fix something or get it right, we go and find the best person for the job. And frankly, an add-on seek is probably the last thing we would do. So what I was hoping to see was a couple of sort of new Tasmanian faces, perhaps a couple of people that, have a good bit of insight. I don't know, I was Chief Operations Officer for Chaz Kelly up at C-Link for a period of time, and now I'm coming on the board to help them out to get it moving or something like that. I would have really preferred to see that. I don't know what your thoughts are, Brad.
Well, I think what you're saying is it looks a little bit like different but same.
Yes, that's correct. I think if you want to change the outcome, you've got to change the way you do it. And I think, frankly, when you've got such a shit show that's been the TT line, frankly, you've got to go and hand select somebody to run it. And say to them, right, the reason why you're getting this job is because we need to do this, this and this. I think going through a process where you'll get process-driven board members who I'm sure are thoroughly capable at one level, but you won't get that spirit of we're going to get in and fix it. And sort
Spirit
of
of, very good.
Spirit of. Ha. There you go. All right. And just beyond that, Brad, I understand that there might be a little bit of news about that.
A little bit of mail I've picked up. Apparently, Spirit 4 got a bit of a scratch on it.
Scratch on our beautiful new boat.
Yes, while parked in...
Parked?
Stored, docked, whatever the term is.
How do you scratch something when it's parked?
Did somebody key it?
Word is that it got a unfortunate scratch against the wharf in Leith. Is that where it is?
Yeah,
Yes.
Someone backed their sports utility vessel into it in
Yeah.
the car park.
Yeah, I think the suggestion is it's caused by friction against the side of the wharf. There was not appropriate protections between the metal of the boat and
The fenders out.
someone forgot.
Isn't that what
Now,
happens to the wharf? You've got tyres and stuff.
I'm told it's just little.
Yeah.
Tis
Yeah,
but
the
a scratch.
boat's 200 metres long, so I'm not quite sure how little is, but there you go.
Sounds like the initial reports given to the captain of the Titanic.
It does sound a bit like that, doesn't it?
It's 200 metres long.
little,
That's right.
It's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
Come back
Move
to
on.
you.
Move on.
It'll
Move
be
on.
fine.
All
She's
right.
unsinkable, sir.
It's the
So
latest.
either just
Bit of
around that, either the scratches above the waterline on the paint, in which case they have to redo the Duco, which could be a little bit tricky and expensive, or it's below the waterline, which could be worse because then it might rust.
I think anyone who's bought $1 billion ferry knows that you lose about half the value as soon as you drive it off the lot, don't you?
Well, at least if they bring it out, at least we'll be able to get any potential warranty claims through it. That's for sure.
Well, it's under warranty for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's.
Roughly coincides with the period it won't be at sea,
Yeah.
but you know.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if they make a
When does it
decision not
start
to lease,
working? Will it still be under warranty when it's...
Well, that's why they need to get it here and get it doing stuff.
Get it running so we can
I see. All right.
Get the
check-
local
Okay,
check
I
in.
really do need to start reading the Mercury.
Yeah, you
Check your
do.
local
Sorry,
waters.
you do,
It's,
so.
it's hilarious. You really should.
All right. Well, there you go. We've definitely kicked that round the room well and truly. And speaking of kicking things round the room, let's take a look at the stadium now. There's been some fairly significant developments on that front over summer. Dave, no doubt you would have hopefully had a good read of the Gruen report and the stadium. What do you make of it?
Yeah, picked up the gist of it. I don't think he was particularly impressed. Probably the wrong stadium at the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think
the
that
wrong
was
colour.
sort of his sense.
All
Yeah.
the rest. Yeah, it's interesting because I look at it and compare it to the S-Lake report where, you know, somebody reasonably intelligent and accomplished points out to us something that, you know, most of us sort of figured out a while ago. It was interesting for me. I feel like it was released on the weekend and I had the day off, sort of ripped through it and went, oh, that's pretty damning. What was interesting for me was the government response, which was like, okay, on with the job.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a testament to the government's determination to push ahead with this project no matter what, and that's been evident from the start. I guess what they knew then that we now know is that there is allegedly some fairly significant private sector backing for the stadium, which I think changes some of the calculus. You know, if the government is within cooee of sticking to that promise of not committing more than, was it 375 million? You know, a lot of the, a lot of the things in the Gruen report, I guess, are a little bit moot because it changes the economics of things. It turns it from being a bit of a dog of a public project into a public-private partnership where, it's perhaps a little bit more. Sounds like the government's going to wear most of the losses and we're going to privatise the gains, but at least we're not paying for the whole damn precinct.
Yeah, Brad, what do you make of it?
Yeah, it was a damning report in parts, but as you said, David didn't tell us anything that we didn't really all know in the sense of the cost and those various aspects. I did think that Mr. Gruen, and I don't know him personally, but I did think it looked a little bit like the report was written from a perspective of a career bureaucrat that had no love for the private sector because he sort of spent a lot of time sort of downplaying the private sector role in it, which to me didn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. And I think, as you've said, David, we've seen then the government's claiming strong private sector interest. So, it was what it was. I think you're right. The government's response was, David O'Byrne's response was the best response, perhaps the response the government should have done, but never happened. Yeah. The other thing that I think was important that happened on the stadium debate over the New Year was Erica Betts came out and took Stadium 2.0, shot it, put it into a coffin, buried it, dug the coffin up, and then burnt it. And I don't know what he did with the ashes, but he did say that 2.0, as far as the government was concerned, was dead, buried and cremated. Yep. Think about it. Doesn't really work. But anyway, strongest statement on that. So and, far, we'll see whether or not that remains the case. They're certainly very persistent, Mr. Lennon and co. But
from government,
government's been the clearest statement yet that they're not
pretty overdue in my view. But
and I've always said it, and I will make the point again that I'm old enough to remember the pulp mill debate. You probably to Beach when people who were pretending to be pro pulp mill were saying not here. How about at Hampshire? Well, Hampshire was never real, and it just became a stalking horse to kill the actual pulp mill. And I think the same's happening here. People will say, "Oh, don't like Stadium 1, but 2 is brilliant." Well, 2 doesn't exist, and it's just a stalking horse to kill the original stadium. You're smirking. Were you part of the Hampshire bullshit made up thing?
I was, and I thought it was a great option, and I would have.
It's not too late.
I would have loved to see.
Is it? If I drive up, will I find it? If I drive up there, is it? Where do I look, on the left or the right?
Look, well, the point. Do you want this? The point about Hampshire was that when North Forest.
Were you working with Roger Yench on this?
Yeah, I might have been. God. I might have been working with Burnie City Council on this one, and we might have fought very hard for Hampshire. It was probably over before it began. But the only point I'd make about Hampshire was North Forest Products, world best practice company, had set up a whole series of plantations in the Hampshire area with a view that one day they would build a pulp mill there. So Hampshire was an ideal location. It had a rail spur just nearby. It had a lot of things going for it.
Just one problem, Mr. Gay didn't want to build it
there.
I
know. So I don't know why they came up with 2 options. But anyhow, that's... Anyhow, it was a good campaign. I'm very proud of what we did.
You killed the pulp mill. Well done.
What happened?
What happened there? Becher pulled a face in the sandwich.
There was one temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees.
It's like the wind changed.
Jesus. I've been accused of many things, Brad.
I think he was on his own there.
Yeah.
The Sturshams were
plenty of people on the northwest coast were very supportive of the Hampshire problem.
It's great that it's happened.
Anyhow, all right, there you go.
Oh, the other thing, Beach, sorry, let's get back to the stadium rather than go down the rabbit hole.
He's exactly right. Give him a minute.
You don't want to revisit. I
don't mind revisiting it. It's just a bit...
The other thing was the architect of the stadium, Mr. Gutwin, although I think he was, as you pointed out to me, Beach, was the architect of Flotus, and moving it to Mac Point was Jeremy's silly idea. The architect of the stadium, we have to have a stadium and has to be in Hobart, the team has to be based in Hobart, can't happen any other way. Mr. Gutwin came out and said, look, stadium's not going to be built by 2029, who cares? Well, let's play for 5 years in Launceston. That'd be brilliant. No need to even worry about this Hobart thing. I mean, what the actual?
Yeah, I got to say, this was breathtaking. This was absolutely breathtaking for me. Peter started this whole process. I get why he started this whole process, but then, and I remember at the time having discussions with people saying, surely you'd just upgrade the stadium at York Park. Surely you'd just do that and get a bit of economic stimulus into the north of the state. I think I've always had that view. But I was told that no, the players wouldn't want to live in Launceston. It wouldn't work. We've got to do it in Hobart. We've got to do it on the waterfront, blah, 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 blah. And the very man that started that process is now saying, oh, no, we could actually have the team in Launceston for a period of time. I mean, it's just breathtaking, I've got to say.
Well, he is the president of the
TFA. And look, I understand very much Peter's view that sport and elite sport is a pathway out of poverty and those kind of things, and I'm absolutely with him. But I do think it's a bit rich that the man who started this whole process that now sees the stadium in Hobart saying, "Oh well, actually we could have matches in the north."
What do you reckon Jeremy was thinking when he read those comments?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome
thanks.
back.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good chat.
Launceston's lovely, right? But it's not like you're not the capital. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry to break it to you, Launceston. There already is a capital state. It's lovely and it's wonderful to drive up there.
I think there's
the
merit in
roadworks.
it, but that debate
Just
should have been
calm
had
down,
before.
Launceston.
Yeah, it should have been. It should have been had before, but my point is, it's the centre of the state from a footy point of view. If you're from the northwest coast, right, and you want to go and watch the footy, are you going to drive to Hobart or are you going to fly to Melbourne and go and watch it in the MCG? I reckon you're going to fly to Melbourne unless it's an absolute cracker of a match here in Hobart. Whereas if it was in York Park in Launceston, you'd drive down for the night. We'd drive up from Hobart for the night. I wouldn't, but others.
Oh no, I did. I went up and saw an Essendon game. My one return to AFL since the terrible events of the early 2000 teens.
Of which you're not bitter and you don't have a long memory. But the point being that for me,
it was like Firefly getting cancelled, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Launceston post Guns. Launceston, with the pulp mill that I clearly destroyed, post Guns, Launceston really needs some economic stimulus, and I really felt an AFL team in Launceston would be a great thing.
Right.
I think from
two capital cities.
Well, I think from tourism point of view, Hobart has a unique offering. It has an offering that attracts people to it, and I think we need strong regions. But anyhow, there it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that we had to have the stadium in Hobart to have the team. It had to be ready when the team started.
Yeah.
Now the architect of it is saying, 5-year delay, playing Launceston, all good.
No biggie.
No biggie.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Killer?
Oh, look, I think we'll be talking about the stadium. We were talking about the issue of the year. I think I'll back the ferries over the stadium. I think this is just going to continue on.
It's the new cable car.
Okay, is that a you heard it first on the FontCast with David Killick?
Hardly a revelation. I think this is just a slow burn. Everyone's dug their trenches. I can't see. Well, have we started construction? Are we counting construction having started?
I think that's a good point. I mean,
there's money in the budget. It's just
the biggest. The government. The longer it goes on without anything happening of any substance down there, apart from building a lake, whatever they've done, the greater the risk is that it will fall over, and the government just needs to be doing everything they can to get that first brick laid. And once the first brick is laid, it'll change. Because then
it's hard to argue.
Anyone who's against it is talking about cancelling or what you're going to rip the walls down. It just becomes a really difficult proposition to argue.
And it just doesn't have a lot of, I know there's a lot of opposition to it, but I just don't think the numbers in Parliament, which is where this is going to be decided, are there for the anti side to prevail.
Unless Labor gets a bit weak now.
As far as we can tell, unless Labor finds some wedge that it can drive in at the 95th percentile of this issue and say we're really opposed to we don't like the wallpaper or that's the wrong sort of timber. I just don't think there's a fundamental. My analysis of the numbers in Parliament are that this project's going to go ahead.
Well, I think there'll be lots of huffing and puffing downstairs, but I think the LegCo will be an interesting place to watch. I think they'll hold the key to the doors on this one if there's more legislation coming through. Anyhow, we'll move on. One of the other things that we think will be a key issue this year is speaking of former Treasurer Peter Gutwin, is the budget. We might leave that for another day, but
If people are so excited, we're going to talk about it.
we're going to build it up and then going to let you down. But because it's probably worth a show unto itself. But I do want to know, Brad, what's going on with the former Treasurer, not Peter Gutman, but the former Treasurer, Michael Ferguson?
Yeah, very good question. Just quickly, and
Thank you.
on the budget, I think we probably should have a more substantive discussion, perhaps next pod.
Yep.
But I did see a couple of days ago the AMA, the Doctors' Union, that's what they are, came out calling for higher taxes to pay for a new hospital. We need another new hospital. Apparently, 15 in Tasmania isn't enough, and we should have higher taxes. So I just thought maybe they could lead by example and start by unexempting themselves from payroll tax. Every other business in Tasmania with a payroll of over 1.25 million pays payroll tax. Doctors don't.
Okay. Well, that'd be a very noble gesture, wouldn't it?
If they really want to be serious about it, I suggest that they might be the ones that make that first very sensible contribution.
Yeah, that'd be a generous way.
Voluntary pay tax.
Well,
voluntarily.
Well, they say that we need to raise revenue, so
Raise
let's
revenue
start
to
with the
build
cutting
new-
out the rort that they've currently got, eh?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Taxation is theft.
yeah, no, I'm with you, Sam. I don't like tax, but
If you're paying tax, you're making money. But anyhow, go on.
is that why doctors don't pay
like
tax?
it. I like it.
Anyhow.
Anyway, Michael Ferguson. So I was sitting down over Christmas, like David. I wasn't canoeing down the
was I?
kayaking.
I was looking for skates.
Just looking for skates in the
help
Port Davey.
Need to find half a
Did
dozen.
you find any?
No,
They're
no.
extinct.
Only lobsters and
No
flathead and
Maybe it's
Any,
lobsters.
see any platypuses or anything like that?
platypuses.
Maybe the lobsters.
You mean
ate the
skates, like the
skate.
little.
The more giant
The
skate.
dinosaur skates. Yeah.
There was there was once, obscurity
stingray looking
personified.
things.
There was once a small population in Bathstaba. There were 4 found over 40 years, and the conundrum is, why did they disappear from Bathstaba? Where
No
there was
fish
no
farms.
no
There's
fish
no
farms.
fish
So this
farms,
is
so,
the $64 million question of
They were fed to the salmon.
In fact, the Magellan skate were first called the Port Davey skate.
exactly. So
'Cause
yeah,
that's-
it's absolutely fascinating.
Anyway,
Come on.
So
Wonks.
Michael Ferguson. So
Skate wonks.
here I was scrolling aimlessly through my Facebook feed,
You could.
and this post popped up from Mr. Ferguson. He'd been doing some summer reading.
Contemplation, I think.
Contemplation,
Yes.
and he was approvingly quoting George Washington. It's quite cryptic, but actually it wasn't so cryptic. Approvingly quoting George Washington talking about choosing the hard way, but the right way, versus the easy way. And then since that time, Michael's been, if you go back and look through his feed,
Yeah.
there's a number of quite interesting philosophical quotes along those sorts of lines, and more pointedly a quote on the post where he had a picture of a lady who was using a poker machine in the recent New South Wales flash floods in Sydney somewhere. And he very pointedly stated, one day we will put the power into players' hands. It will happen. That woman apparently didn't have any power. And I can tell you that certainly got tongues.
She was like she didn't have 240 volts going through.
No,
her.
she didn't have. She was
playing knee deep in a flood. But
she was unable to walk away, I think was his point. It was out of her control. But I can tell you that post did get tongues wagging in the government, and I think it's pretty clear to me that Michael has decided that he's not going anywhere. He's not leaving the parliament, and he, I think, is going to perhaps be one of those known unknowns this year.
well, you've got someone with considerable talent, considerable experience, and now considerable time on his hands, mounting the lower slopes of a hill to die on. It poses risks. It sounds like Michael Ferguson's ample talents need an outlet. I think he's paid the price for, the TT line staff probably paid some of the price for issues in the health system going back years. I think I may have said before I held the view that if he hadn't held the health portfolio prior, to this latest fiasco, he might have got off a bit more lightly. But he's not going anywhere. He's still a relatively young man. He's very ambitious. This issue, I don't pretend to know him, as well as some do, but this issue for him, I feel, is one of great conviction and passion, and as I say, he's on. This is a hill, Michael Ferguson. Well, probably not choosing to die on it, but he'll certainly fight on it.
Yeah,
and he'll
Better
fight
to
long and
choose
hard.
the hard right way than the easy way.
Yeah.
and that's not hard right. That's hard
Yes,
right way.
Well, you can do both.
possibly the same.
Possibly the same thing. But yeah, look, Michael and I have sort of been contemporaries over many years. I love a chat with Michael. He's a very thoughtful kind of person. And he said to me, I'm going to go into the Christmas break. I've made no decisions. I'm just going to go and have a break. And I said, well, good on you. My view was for Michael to singularly wear all the brunt of the failure of the TT line was a bit unreasonable. I think there were failures elsewhere, both within those organisations, including the Tasports and TT line. And I, just on a more superficial glance than you, Brad, definitely seen Michael talking up some of the infrastructure projects that the state's been working on social media, on Facebook, and looking at that going, well, there's a man who's clearly proud of what he's been part of and proud of being part of the team. He ain't going anywhere, so I agree. But I also understand that there's been one more, arguably just as significant development, Brad, in terms of his relationship with other members of the cabinet.
Your word is that Michael and Eric are friends again.
Yeah, so that's,
Eric Betts, that is.
I think that's an interesting development myself, because I think for a while there, I don't think they've been as close, if that makes sense. And I think now Michael and Eric working together will very much change the dynamic. It'll be interesting to see where that goes.
How did they do it? How do they thrash it out? Did they fight? Did they shout at each other?
Exchange of Christmas cards.
Yeah.
Nice way to start.
Time heals.
Eric, thinking of you.
Time
Not
heals
Michael.
many wounds, I think would be the same thing. Anyhow, unless you have anything else to add, Dave, on that
Well,
one,
it's
I'm
just
going
been very interesting. I mean, from talking to people as they're drifting back to their offices and the rest, I feel that Christmas has been a time of great contemplation for some members of the government, where people have perhaps had a little bit too much time to reflect on the things that are irritating them rather than uniting them. So maybe a bit of proximity will re-spark old friendships. Maybe it will re-spark old enmities. But I feel people have spent a lot of time alone thinking, looking up quotes from Churchill and Shakespeare. And
when you went through the Mercury survey and saw Michael from Launceston, you made
I've got to tell you, and I'll share this with you because it was the most interesting result of the Mercury survey, where we asked people to write in their most admired politician, and it did come down to you get that name recognition factor where premiers and opposition leaders all do very well. But the outstanding result from that survey, and I ended up tabulating all of the state MPs, some of whom were unlucky enough not to get a single mention, some of whom, obviously have loyal staffers, so anything under 7 or 8. But the outstanding result from that was Eric Betts, who, relatively short time on the state scene, but obviously a long federal career, was head and shoulders above every other member of the government, barring Jeremy Rockcliffe.
Wow.
Some bias here because we're a southern paper and our readers would naturally be more focused on the southern members. But, for someone who's been appearing daily in the newspaper, for a relatively short time, his Senate career tended to attract national attention. But the second most popular, and that's a write-in survey. So you have to think of, some of the variations on the spelling of some of the members was pretty extraordinary. Jackie Lambie, I think, holds the record for the most variations of name spelling. But that was one of the very interesting.
And would make a great yarn, and I look forward to reading it in the Mercury newspaper.
I think I did right.
You did spelling.
Yeah, well.
I did right.
You wrote the bit stuff.
Yeah, okay.
It's
All
like
right,
this.
good.
You missed that one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, there you go.
Man's entitled to take a break.
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah. Anyhow, right. Let's turn our attention to the looming federal election. Brad, when's it going to be?
Well, I'm not a betting man, but if I was to bet, I'd be all in on April 12th.
Okay, Killer, what do you reckon? What do you make of
Gosh,
this
I think
one?
the champagne intakes erased my memory. I did have a date. I think it was
Yeah.
the third Saturday in March was my initial bet, but I'm sort of also leaning towards April, although it's
think
running
that-
up pretty close to the Easter break. What's at the 17th?
Yeah, April 12
the
would mean
last.
calling it straight after the WA election, which is March 8. Literally straight after that, like the day or 2 days afterwards, and then allowing the election to be held before Easter. So it's a pretty, at this point, logical and obvious date, I've got to say. I don't think I'm being particularly brilliant by suggesting that date.
There you go. Brad actually concedes. Anyhow,
On that point.
at least. All right. And as the election gets closer, a bit of candidate news, Brad.
Yeah, a bit of news around the traps.
Yep.
People might have seen, it might have been just before Christmas, the Nats made a second attempt to register in Tasmania for the federal election, the National Party that is. Another list of 100 names was promulgated.
Second attempt.
Second attempt. I don't know up to the first one, but clearly fell over.
Well, I mean, the Nats have many attempts in the past.
Great competence from the National Party.
Yep.
But again, Mr. Tucker and Ms. Alexander's name was on that list.
Yep.
And I'm hearing that Mr. Tucker in particular is very keen to run in the federal election. Most likely, if he was to run, you think it would be in Lions. Some suggestion he could run in Bass, but that would be a breach of the coalition agreement because the Libs have got a sitting member there, so I think that's not going to happen. Could run in the Senate as well. I think no matter where he runs, he's probably just going to be embarrassing himself again, so probably best to stick to cow farming at this point in his career. And I would say also if he did run for the Nats, or indeed Miss Alexander would have run for the Nats, it would be a pretty ordinary move from the Nats to pick up disloyal ex-Liberals and endorse them as candidates for the coalition partner. So bit of talk about it, but whether it actually happens or not,
I think they
I'm
call
not so
it
sure.
It's cattle farming these days.
Cattle farming?
Cattle
What
farming.
did I say?
Cow farming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cattle
Cat
farming.
farming.
Thank you.
Technicality, I know, but
That's
like,
right.
just
Maybe he only has female cattle.
Strict accuracy.
Killer.
Really interesting, that list of folk on the National Party nominees list. You'd have to run in Lions. I went through that. I think it's most of Bothwell,
Yes.
most of Ellendale. So I've really got there's 2 booths in Lions that are absolutely dead certs to get 6 or 8%. You know.
Yeah.
I don't have any particular insight. I think the Nationals. We've talked about this. They've flared and waned previously. There's a vote there for some of us. They're not going to win. Probably not going to decide the outcome. There's 5 or 6 or something % that will go somewhere, a protest vote against the major parties, like we've seen with the Lambie candidates. It's just a sideshow, to be honest.
Well, let's be clear though. If Nats were to run in Lions, if Mr. Tucker was to saddle up in Lions, and even if he was only to get 4 or 5%, which I think is all he would get,
flow onto Bauer.
that would, not all those votes are going to flow through to Susie Bauer. There will be leakage, and it would only be to Labor's advantage for him to run. It just splits that coalition vote even. So it's going to be a very close seat. We're talking.
It's a good point.
Even 1%
for the Liberal candidate. Pick him.
And then they might go off. Who knows? They'll go next, shooters or whatever, and you end up losing the vote.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyhow, there's not only the Nats are having a bit of fun and games. The mayor of Clarence. One Brendan Blomley, Brad.
Well, yeah. Word is he hasn't given up on his political career. Can't be a Lib anymore because that's all been blown up. But suggestion is he's going to run for federal Franklin as an independent. Beach. What do you reckon his chances are there?
Buckley's and none would be mine.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a wise move.
I've got to say, I mean. That's what we're hearing. I don't know who's pumping up Brendan's tyres on this one, but frankly, it's madness in my view, I've got to say. One thing, though, I did see his comments regarding Leonie Hiskett, where Leonie's supporting her son running as an independent. Leonie's a Lib. And Brendan, quite rightly, in my view, is making the point, Brad, that, why is it that Leonie can do this? He can be asked a question at a press conference, are you contemplating running as an independent, respond?
Press conference he called.
Well, I'm just making the point that that I think his point was very fair. In the scheme of things.
I
Totally
don't,
fair point.
Yes.
I don't disagree. In fact, I agree. And of course, we're talking about not the federal election anymore, but about the upper house election in Montgomery. And I have raised this before on this pod. I'm sure I did about 6 months ago when Leonie was first started campaigning for her son.
Well, anointed him effectively.
Anointed him as an
announced-
independent,
yeah.
head of the Liberal candidate, ex-Senator Stephen Parry.
Yep.
In my view, Brendan's entirely entitled to point out that there's a double standard here. He gets booted out for what he did, whereas she got a slap on the wrist. Might be generous.
Well, his offence, I think, was just contemplating
Yeah.
a run as an independent, which seemed to me, on the grand scheme of things, to be not that egregious, whereas she's campaigning on behalf of another candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I think he's got a right to feel.
Well, it's,
absolutely.
it's rank
Agreed.
hypocrisy,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Let's face it. So
I mean, yeah, look,
Yeah.
blood's thicker than water and all that sort of stuff. Of course, she's going to support her
yeah,
son, but
I understand.
rules are rules. Rules apply to everybody, and she's got the slap on the wrist. But my view, very clearly, if she crosses that line again, and let's not forget, as much as the Hiscots think they have some sort of royal claim on the seat, going back and forward centuries,
Generations.
she was only elected in 2013 on the back of the Liberal brand.
Yeah.
The Liberal vote
Yeah.
in 2013 was approaching its zenith ahead of the
Yep.
2014 state
Yep.
election, and she was only elected because of that Liberal brand. She's had a 10, 12-year career as a Liberal, including leader in the upper house.
Yeah.
To now turn around and poke the party in the eye that gave her that career, I think is pretty ordinary.
I think
Might
so.
even suggest disloyal. And if she does cross that line again, then I suggest she should be sent very quickly to go and sit with Brendan in the bleachers.
Well, before you guys started talking about her, I hadn't even heard of her. So,
There you go.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not
you
saying
don't
a
like
lot.
Launceston.
I don't
You
even know
haven't
what
gone any
Julie
further than
Collins
that.
does, but yeah.
All right. Oh, well, thanks for that, Sam. Right. Unless
Man in
you,
the street. But I mean, this is...
yeah,
this
but
is
that's
the-
true. That's so true.
When you
But
talk about these things,
Yeah.
this is how people
There's so
react. I
many
mean,
names like Carol Brown. Who? What?
Carol's a
It's true.
senator for
You
Tasmania
could-
and a good one.
I doubt
might
you
add.
could get one person in 100 in Tasmania who could name all 12 senators, for
Yeah.
example.
Yep.
I think
Yes, no,
that's
I
a fair
remember remarking many years ago there must be an election this year because Kay Denman issued a media release, and I remember thinking to myself, there you go, there's evidence. Anyhow, thank you, Sam.
What's a Kate Denman?
All right, and that's time. Stay tuned for our next episode in a couple of weeks.
I wrote on my version, but not yours because this is early. Just one more thing very quick before we
okay.
go.
Yep.
I don't think we can not remark, David, the release of the independent review into education, which came out yesterday.
Yep. The what did we say? It was it was a 5-month review. Into
5-month review.
25-year problem.
You had a very brave attempt at trying to put together 400 words about what it actually said.
No, it was very high concept.
It was,
There weren't dollar signs or recommendations. We should be nicer to teachers. We should value education more. That central point, and I think the two interplay. The education has traditionally been undervalued in Tasmania, and I come back to your point about elite sport being a pathway. Beach's point, elite sport being a pathway out of poverty. Got a surer one: literacy, numeracy.
Yes.
The key to prosperity for the young folk of this state is not the aspiration to play for an AFL
And we
team.
used to have one of the best education systems in the
it's
world.
getting
The
a
good news
education.
is that this inquiry commissioned by the Minister, Ms Palmer, your ex-colleague Becher, under pressure from academia and the Labor Party, for God's sake, it found, amongst other things, I had a quick read too, David, that we should focus on literacy.
Oh.
Wow, we needed a $50,000 plus.
Apparently, we're not
inquiry.
bad at that, and
we
we should keep doing it.
That's
Is
great, because that's what I thought education was all about.
Yep.
And also, quote, we should be, quote, improving the narrative and reporting underpinning success to increase student and family understanding around the value proposition of education.
It's as ambiguous as an Elon Musk hand gesture.
Okay.
Hey,
So doesn't that yes?
What does that word salad mean? That's
Does that mean we should be saying good education is a good thing?
I think it means if I could be so blunt as suggesting that the minister just pissed $50,000 plus of taxpayer money against the wall, and maybe on an interstate consultant, to be clear, maybe we should just focus on getting our education system to teach kids to read, write and arithmetic. Radical idea.
Radical. Controversial even. Right, well, on that bombshell, it's time.
David Bartlett would have told you all that for free, by the way. You know,
Exactly right. Yes, that's a very good point.
He told us 20 years ago.
Well, he probably would have written that report for half the price that the interstate consultant did. Anyhow, stay tuned for our next episode in a couple of weeks featuring...
The Premier.
Wow.
Oh, David's getting excited.
Keller's getting excited.
I might not be allowed in.
Yeah, well, no, you definitely will be. And we've got a mini pod out in a couple of days with some exclusive polling on Australia Day done by our good friends at Enterprise Market and Research Services. I've had a sneak peek at the results and there are some very interesting insights coming your way. FontCast is brought to you by Enterprise Marketing and Research Services, Tasmania's leading and trusted research provider. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, David.
It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget to like, rate or share on whatever platform you use. It always helps to share the hashtag PolitasLove.
And catch us on the YouTube channel when I've set it up.
When we've got it and when it's got a name. Anyhow, FontCast is produced and directed by Sam Eichen from Eichen Media. And until next time, carry on.